All right, so welcome back to Happy Hour with Heather and Guest. This is episode number 76. I am sporting a new look, going back to the old pork pie fedora and the mustache with the soul patch. So switching
The
things up.
beard, the beard is gone.
The beard is there was too much white in the beard, so now it's gone. Actually, that wasn't the reason, but I just like switching things up. So,
Yeah.
but today, episode 76, where it's the ball was back in my court, and I went with a band from Belgium called Grotto, who have I found four albums that they have out. I think two singles and two EPs. So,
Yeah.
any, why don't you kick us off? Anything you want to?
Sure. I was checking out their Instagram page and I saw that they don't like to be called stoner rock. So I'm going to refrain from mentioning anything about stoner rock. But I think it's a joke because they have they have stoner rock as one of their tags on Bandcamp. So
Gotcha.
so I think it might be a bit of a joke. But you know, I'm gonna go with instrumental, progressive, heavy psychedelic. I saw some comparisons to Elder, and if you're familiar with Elder, then you might get a good idea of the style of music that this band plays. Um, you know, I really like that the songs are longer. Nothing is rushed. Every song takes its time and is able to unfold, which I really, really like. I listened to three of their albums, and one person on Bandcamp said for people that actually love music and its mindfulness. And I thought that was a really, really I thought that really encapsulated everything that I think this band is very mindful. In the horror community, people talk about elevated horror, and is there such a thing as elevated heavy music? Is that a thing? And if so, I submit Grotto. I submit Grotto for consideration.
Yeah, well, I think that's a thing now.
It should be, I think.
So we can start classifying it as elevated heavy music.
Yes, yes.
So, and Grotto will be a good benchmark to use. Does it pass
Yeah.
the Grotto test? So cool. Yeah, I think I found them back in like 2014 or 2015, maybe, but probably 2015 because I think their first single I think was released in 2015. Um, and then I remembered listening to their EP. I think it's Smokeanomicon, just because I fell down the rabbit hole of looking into progressive psychedelic music, and I have an image of myself. So when I first moved here, I was teaching at a school. I don't have a car, so it had I found my apartment based on the need to because I was going to walk to school every day. So walking to and from school, I would often listen to music on my phone, and I remember discovering Grotto and being like, "Oh, well, this was a new band." And then when you and I had been thinking about bands to discuss on this show, I remembered Grotto. It was like, oh yeah, 10 years, almost 10 years ago, I'll revisit Grotto. I don't think I'd listened to them since then, so it was a nice. And yeah, like you, I had read the. If you're a fan of Elder, that's the sort of the music, um, and it is a little bit more sophisticated. I think because there's so much happening. I think sometimes you think of uh, like stoner metal that it can be really formulaic, but I enjoy sort of how they add some sophistication to it. And yeah, I listened to. They have a single called Odyssean, which I think was their first, or Odyssean. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. And then Smokeanomicon, Circle of Magi, and Lantern of Gaius, which are all either EPs or singles. Um, so yeah, definitely worth checking out. I was sort of interested in, again, this has become my sort of de facto question, but the band name. What does Grotto mean?
A cave?
Yes, well, I looked it up. Um, you are correct. It does mean so the word grotto. So for those of you out there who want a quick history lesson, this is get comfy. The word grotto, um, I think, actually comes from the French word grotesque, which in Latin also means crypt, I think, or grotto in Latin, I think, means crypt. So in the 15th century, Romans accidentally unearthed Nero's Domus Aurea on the Palatine Hill, a series of rooms decorated with designs of garlands, slender architectural framework, foliage, and animals. The rooms had sunk underground over time. The Romans who discovered this historical monument found it very strange, partly because it was uncovered from an underworld source. This led the Romans of that era to give it the name Grotesca, which comes from the word grotesque, which I think over time became grotto. So it was interesting to think, okay, it's an underwater cave, or it's some sort of cave, but perhaps this band has looked at it with the mind of a crypt, looking at it sort of more of a grotesque thing. So I don't know.
Yeah, the name kind of struck me because there used to be a bar called Grotto, the Grotto. So I was like, oh yeah, that name is familiar to me because of that bar that used to be there, but it's not there anymore. But yeah, that's the name kind of struck me that way.
Gotcha. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because what I just read came from Wikipedia.
Uh-huh.
And you know how they have on the bottom, they have like other links for similar things. So
Yeah.
apparently, in underneath when the Brooklyn Bridge was constructed, there was something called the Blue Grotto, where people kept like it was a winery, like people
Oh.
housed wine under the Brooklyn Bridge.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. The wine cellars had originally been constructed as sort of a compromise. Uh, the chief bridge engineer developed plans for a roadway connecting Brooklyn and Manhattan. The question loomed over what to do with two establishments that were in the past of the construction. So I believe they incorporated storing wine under the bridge made perfect sense. The caverns below the 60,000-ton granite entrances were dark and consistently cool, ideal places to house even the most delicate vintages of Bordeaux, Burgundy, or Champagne. So there you go.
Very interesting.
Yes, and I defy anyone out there to find another show in which you'll learn about instrumental progressive psychedelic metal and the fact that they used to house wine under the Brooklyn Bridge.
Yes.
You're not going to find it.
The see, people are getting a peek inside the great mind of Andrew Davy.
That's certainly one way to phrase it, and I appreciate you putting it that way. But yeah, it's always interesting when we talk about these bands, and then it becomes a launching point to just, for me at least, to completely descend into a realm of like, ooh, I wonder what this means. I wonder what this means. I wonder,
Yeah,
we still don't know what Murloc means.
I know. I know.
And
Um,
yeah, I don't know if I ever want to know. Like, it's nice to just think that perhaps we glossed over one of the possible things, but
yeah, yeah,
apparently not.
yeah.
But
There's still that era of mystery.
yeah, well, but I'd be curious to hear, whether Grotto, I think, is probably a little bit more straightforward. I don't think there's any sort of hidden this the band, and I obviously I've never met any of the musicians, but the way their music strikes me as like, this is what you see is what you get type thing. We're just going to go out there and play great music, and we're not about gimmicks or
Right.
anything like
We
that.
are we are who we are.
Yeah,
And I think their album art, I think really you kind of get an idea of that too, looking at their album art and the kind of music that they play. And I think it goes so well with, kind of giving you an idea of what you're going to hear when you play their music.
yeah. Well, and I know the their first single came out in 2015, and then I think they've released music up till 2019 pretty, every year, pretty much. So it's been like 3 or 4 years since they've released anything. So I hope they're still making music. I'm not sure,
I
but
hope so too. Yeah, it did. I saw when I was looking at on their Instagram page, I noticed it's been a while since they've posted anything on their Instagram page.
gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
gentlemen in Grotto, if you're out there, we hope you're making music because it's dynamite.
Yeah.
There's a new category now. Um, Elevated, was that what it was? Elevated?
Elevated. Yeah,
Yes,
elevated.
elevated stoner rock or elevated progressive psychedelic, whatever.
Yes. Elevated heavy music.
Yes, that's what it was. Yes,
Yes.
yeah. For some reason, I'm totally gonna blame the aneurysm on that, even though that must have just been like a moment in time.
That's
But
okay.
thank you.
That's
Yes,
okay.
and yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm gonna. I will probably look into further the underground winery in Brooklyn, even though that really has nothing to do with the music. It's just fun to
Yeah.
think
Is
about.
it still there?
I don't know. Um, I would imagine it is. I don't know if it's still being used, but I will look into it and let you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Underground cities fascinate me.
sure.
Anything that's going on underneath the city is just fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, I think perhaps at some point, if we go to the Brooklyn Bridge, we'll have to listen to Grotto and inspect and see what's happening there.
Yeah. That sounds like a good idea.
Cool. Yes. And in the meantime, next week is we're going to do High Priest,
Yes.
I
Yes.
believe.
Yeah, they just released an album, and so I thought now would be the perfect time to talk about them.
Sure. That'll be
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Going back to Chicago.
nice. As we
Yeah.
always do. It's
Yeah.
and that's a great opportunity for me to quote from the Blues Brothers. It's 108 miles to Chicago. We have a full tank of gas, half a pack of cigarettes. It's dark out, and we're wearing sunglasses.
Yes.
Hit it.
Hit it.
Hit it. Yes. Well, hopefully we will make it to Chicago, uh, and not get driven off the road by the good old boys in their Winnebago. So cool. Well, I'm
Yep,
glad you like. Go on.
I did. I did like them very much. Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, really, really, really. I was impressed. I really was impressed with
Yeah.
their music. It's really good.
Good. Well, it is
Yeah,
elevated heavy rock.
it's
So
elevated. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, very
awesome. Well,
impressive.
I urge you to check out Grotto from Belgium. I hope they're making new music. And we'll be back next week to talk High Priest from Chicago.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, have a good rest of your day, and we'll be back next week, everyone.
Thank you.